On today's show, I want to revisit a video we did on the channel earlier, which is this 5-step plan for Terry Fontenot and the Falcons to free up cap space. And then I kind of thought, well, if you're going to free up cap space, I should probably present some free agent targets to sign with new said money. So if you didn't watch this video, I'd recommend pausing the current video you're watching right now, watching this one right here, and then coming back to this current video, because I think you'll have a much better understanding of what we're talking about on today's show. But to remind everyone, these were the 5 cap-saving moves we came up with on that video we just looked at a moment ago. Moving on from Taylor Heineke, Lorenzo Carter, Jonnu Smith, extending A.J. Terrell, restructuring Jake Matthews' contract. And if you do all those things, you truly want to maximize your 2024 spending abilities, well, you'll have about $65.8 million in cap space. So if you have $65 million to spend, not going to spend all of it, but you're definitely going to spend some of it, if not most. How about this guy right here, Danielle Hunter, Minnesota Vikings edge rusher. He has been one of the best edge rushers, just statistically, over the last 6-7 seasons. And when you look at the free agent edge rushers this year, I could have gone with Josh Allen or Brian Burns, but I really do believe those guys are going to get re-signed by their current teams. I think the Vikings, though, they are looking to reset a little bit. And it's not a great time for them to get an expensive player on their books when they're not really maybe shaping up to be a major win-now team. We'll have to wait and see how Minnesota plays their hand. So let's talk about Danielle Hunter. He comes off a phenomenal season. One of the NFL sack leaders. 16.5 sacks, 23 tackles for loss. So he does not just go for the quarterback. He can stop the run as well. Now, Spotrac comes out with contract predictions for a bunch of the marquee free agents. They're just a computer simulated projection based on the age, the stats, and other previous contracts given out for that position group. And they projected a 6-year, $60 million contract for Hunter. That's an average of $20 million a season. Now, I found this stat to be rather interesting. From 2015 to present, Danielle Hunter is one of 7 players with 5 or more 10-plus sack seasons. And keep in mind, in that stretch, he missed an entire year 1 year and missed a good chunk of another season as well. And he's still one of only 7 players with 5 or more 10-plus sack seasons. Now, the hiccup is, I don't know if this really is that big of a hiccup. He turns 30 years old in October. So if you don't feel like a 30-year-old or almost 30-year-old edge rusher is worth $60 million, may I remind you about the greatest pass rusher in Atlanta Falcons history, John Abraham, who came over from the Jets. And you can look at his numbers from when he was 22, when he entered the league, till he was 29, and from when he was 30 to 35. And sure, there are some dips, but he played 3 fewer games and had 1.5 sack less in his 30s compared to his 20s. So I don't think anyone should be completely turned off of Danielle Hunter's going to be old. He's on the wrong side of 30 soon. There are some great edge rushers who play great football well into their 30s. And I think Danielle Hunter at 16.5 sacks at the age of 28, 29 years old is not going to wake up on his birthday in October and forget how to play football. So let me know, would you sign Danielle Hunter? Yes or no? Give me your opinion down below in the comment section. You know, I love to see what you guys have to say on the different topics we talk about on today's video. Now, if they sign Danielle Hunter, ballpark range of $53 million remaining in cap space. So they can still spend plenty more money. By the way, this ballpark range, don't look at the average salary, $20 million, and just subtract that from the cap space. That's not how the cap hit works. And ultimately, that's all we're looking for here. Next free agent, wide receiver Michael Pittman. We haven't talked about Michael Pittman a lot on today's show or on any previous show. Well, I'll explain why in a moment. But let's at least look at Michael Pittman's career. 4 seasons for the Indianapolis Colts, 2 years over 1,000 yards, was a part of some rough quarterback play during that stretch, a lot of changing of the guards, right? But still, despite going from a rookie to Gardner Minshew, he put up 1,100 yards, four touchdowns, and hauled in 109 grabs. Now, why have we not talked about Michael Pittman a lot on this channel? I'm not ignoring him. It's because I've been giving much more love to T. Higgins, who I think is a much better wide receiver than Michael Pittman Jr. However, rumors have come out of Cincinnati that the Bengals fully expect to franchise tag T. Higgins, which would take him off the market. And if that's the case, Atlanta would have to do a tag and trade or a sign and trade, basically, of franchise or Bengals franchise him, and then Atlanta trades for him and gives him an extension, kind of like what happened with Devontae Adams. So that's not a true free agent signing, so we'll remove T. Higgins from the equation for a moment. Here are some other free agent wide receivers, though, if you're not a big fan of Michael Pittman. I like Mike Evans, but I don't think Mike Evans at 30 years old is a good fit for the 2024 Falcons. They're looking to go young, and I don't think this is a good time to bring on a receiver who's ready to join a win-now team. And the Falcons are kind of in that territory, but also they still have some strides to make after 3 straight 7-win years. Calvin Ridley's a free agent. Hopefully he re-signs with Jacksonville. That way the Falcons can get a second rounder. Gabe Davis from Buffalo. Marquise Brown, Darnell Mooney, Noah Brown, Tyler Boyd, and KJ Osborne. Some other guys to keep an eye on. Now, as for Michael Pittman's contract, Spotrac projected it to be a 4-year, $90 million contract. That's an average of $22.7 million. That seems a bit on the high side, especially when you factor in the last 2 off seasons have not been very lucrative for wide receiver free agents. Like Christian Kirk's gotten the biggest contract in the last 2 years. Allen Lazard was the highest paid free agent wide receiver last year. Teams are going to the draft to supplement their wide receiver needs. Now, he turns 27 years old in October, so he still has some really good years and really good years. He has his best years in front of him. So I don't think this would be a bad signing by any team. I don't think it's going to be this high. I think it's going to be closer to like 4 years, $80 million, which if that's the case, you might be thinking to yourself, why wouldn't the Colts just do that? Think about the Indianapolis Colts for a moment. Have they ever signed a big-name receiver in free agency? No. I mean, think about that Parks and Rec scene when Andy Dwyer is talking about all the great wide receivers that Indianapolis has drafted. Austin Collie, Reggie Wayne, like they love developing wide receivers like they did with Michael Pittman Jr. So if they think that he is worth $60 million and another team thinks he's worth $70 million, they'll let him walk for $70 million, whatever that number might be, because they have never been in the market of paying free agent wide receivers big bucks. So if Atlanta signs Michael Pittman Jr., ballpark free agency cap space available, $43 million. So still plenty of dough to shell out from Arthur Blank's wallet. Now, we're going to talk about some more free agents in just a second. But first, a quick shout out to our sponsor today, which is Game Time. If you are thinking of going to an Atlanta Hawks game or any other sporting event in your local area, make sure you visit Game Time first, because I want all of our viewers to save as much money as possible. And with Game Time, you can do that by downloading the Game Time app and redeeming the code Falcons Chat for $20 off. So if you are a spur-of-the-moment person, Game Time is the place to be, because they actually will sell tickets to events even an hour after it begins. So if you're like, you know what, it's tip-off right now at State Farm Arena, let's go to the Hawks game, well, you can do that with Game Time. So download the Game Time app today. Use code FalconsChat for $20 off. I put all that information in the comments and description of today's video. Once again, shout out to Game Time for supporting Falcons Today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. They have got you guys covered. Now let's get back to some free agent targets Atlanta could be spending their big money on with all the cap-saving moves we talked about in that previous video. Number 3, Darnell Mooney. Now, you could probably go with one or the other, and these two receivers are in different tiers in my eyes. Or you could be like that one old El Paso commercial and go, why not both, right? Because Michael Pittman Jr. has some similar traits to Drake London as a receiver, but Darnell Mooney is a vertical threat type of receiver, but he's also got some really good hands to go along with it, despite dropping a Hail Mary against the Browns. Now, Darnell Mooney had a breakout sophomore campaign in Chicago, 1,000 yards, 4 touchdowns, and then we saw major regression in 2022 and 2023, where he was just not a good fit with Justin Fields. And if Atlanta trades for Justin Fields, I don't know if Darnell Mooney will be joining him in Atlanta. But Darnell Mooney, a 5th-round pick out of Tulane, PFF, I did not go with Spotrac's projection. It was wildly overestimated. But PFF projects that he can get a 1-year, $9 million contract. And I still feel like that's probably a little bit on the high side. So it could be a 1-year, $6-7 million kind of prove-it-ish contract, if you will. And if that's the case, I can get behind Darnell Mooney. I saw some really good play out of him in 2021. We're looking for vertical threats on this team. And Darnell Mooney does bring that explosive play factor down the field, whoever is quarterback in this team in 2024. Now, if they sign Darnell Mooney, we're talking updated cap space now of about $35 million. So remember, they have to completely redo their entire wide receiver room. So you can still sign Michael Pittman, Darnell Mooney, and you could also draft a wide receiver. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, quick reminder here, help us reach 20,000 subscribers. We're at around 19,200-ish, give or take, and we are 800 away from 20,000 subs, which is actually pretty crazy to say out loud. And I want to get there before free agency truly kicks off on March 11th. So if you have not joined the channel yet, please consider going ahead and doing so. Moving on to our 4th free agent target, which is cornerback Stephon Gilmore. Former NFL Defensive Player of the Year with the New England Patriots. He's bounced around a little bit since then, but I thought he had a pretty solid year at the Cowboys last season. Trayvon Diggs went down. Stephon Gilmore and Deron Bland were thrust into maybe bigger roles than initially anticipated. And Gilmore didn't have one of the best years of his NFL career, but he still had a pretty strong year. 13 pass breakups and 2 interceptions. Now, he's definitely aging, turns 34 years old in September. PFF projects that he could get a 1-year, $10 million contract. As for Pro Football Focus's individual player rankings, they had Gilmore at 35 out of 127 qualifying corners. I think Gilmore is kind of in that tier of cornerbacks that he's been so good for so long. Even at 33, 34, he can still play some really good football for you. But why are we talking about signing Stephon Gilmore, right? You probably didn't expect to see his name on today's video. Well, when we look at Atlanta's cornerback room, it definitely doesn't look like Jeff Okudah is coming back. Trey Flowers is a free agent. Clark Phillips saw some more snaps down the stretch at the end of the year, the rookie out of Utah. But I think Gilmore can serve as a great bridge at CB2. If they don't feel like Clark Phillips is ready out the gate to take over that starting role, put Stephon Gilmore in there. That way Clark Phillips week 1 doesn't feel like he's drowning. And if as the season progresses, you see some good things out of Clark Phillips in the slot, or you see Gilmore start to regress a little bit with his age, you can make a change. But I think it's a valuable veteran insurance policy to bring Stephon Gilmore down to Atlanta to help, whether it's Clark Phillips or even a rookie if they draft one in day 2 of the draft, to serve as a bridge to that long-term CB2 job. Now, if they sign Stephon Gilmore, we are down to about $25 million in cap space. So still, they got some money left to spend. There is plenty left in the piggy bank. And with that being said, we're going to look at the 5th and final free agent target in just a moment. But I do want to ask an off-the-wall question. Speaking of defense, who's your favorite Falcons defender of all time? Who is it on defense? Usually, their favorite Falcons player is Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Michael Vick. They all play offense. I want to know your favorite defensive player all time. 5th and final free agent target. How about a re-signing? Defensive end Calais Campbell, former NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year, an invaluable member of any team's locker room. Calais Campbell is aging like a fine wine. I mean, despite going into his mid-30s, he still was very productive for Atlanta last year. 10 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks, tied with Bud Dupree at the top of the team, right? And Campbell recently did an interview with the AJC, and he talked about returning in 2024. And here's what he said. The last time I talked to Terry, he told me to let him know when I know. He was definitely eager to get me back if I want to play football again. But he was going to respect my process and let me go through it the way I go through it. If I'm Atlanta, I offer him a 1-year, $6 million contract. Last year, he got a 1-year, $7 million. So I don't mean to shortchange Calais Campbell, but as you get a little bit older, the contracts are going to go down. But even if it's 1 year, $7 million, the same as last year, that's fine with me. But I'd like to see Calais Campbell return. You can still go out and draft an edge rusher, but I think this serves as a good veteran presence in the locker room and overall just a great rotational piece on this defensive line where Atlanta is not in a spot where they can start getting ahead of their skis a little bit thinking, well, if we draft Dallas Turner, we're good at edge rusher. No, this franchise has been one of the worst pass rushing franchises in NFL history. More is more. And if they sign Calais Campbell, now they've got about $19-ish million after all the other previous signings we went through. So, sure, we spent a shit ton of Arthur Blank's money. And I don't care. That's the whole point of owning a team. To spend your money to bring a championship to your city. So, if we look at the free agent targets we talked about today, Danielle Hunter, Michael Pittman Jr., Darnell Mooney, Stephon Gilmore, and Calais Campbell. What do we think of them? How would you grade my free agent signings? A, B, C, D, or F? I try to keep it somewhat realistic because I don't think Josh Allen and Brian Burns and T. Higgins are going to be available for the Atlanta Falcons. But I think those other guys have a very real shot of walking away from their current team. So how would you grade my signings? Give me an A, B, C, D, or F.